What's the best way to train and prepare for a bikepacking or cycle touring trip? This is a question I get asked a lot. So what is the best way? Because truthfully, I believe you don't need to be an elite athlete. You don't need to know everything about your bike. You don't even need to have the perfect setup to start. I'm personal proof of this, and so are thousands of other people who've just gone out there with very little prep and begun. So in today's video, I'm hopefully going to give you everything you need to start your first bikepacking or cycle touring trip. We're going to cover some training, some mental resilience tips, and testing your setup. But I will also be reminding you heavily along the way that you don't need everything to be perfect to get started. In fact, sometimes the best preparation is just to get out the front door and get going. Keep that in mind. For now, let's get started. Most of us start cycling or bikepacking and cycle touring with no knowledge. That is the nature of a new hobby. If I were to start tennis tomorrow or golf next week, I would know nothing. For some reason, bikepacking gets people very anxious and very nervous. I'm not sure whether that's because of the physical aspect, because of the risk of mechanicals, because you're cycling, further and further away from your house. Don't know what it is, but it puts a lot of people off. And in some cases, they don't even start. It's quite sad. I guess it can feel overwhelming. But there's one thing that we forget. You don't need to have it all mastered in order to start. You just need to prepare enough to feel confident enough to start. Cool, video over. I've instilled you guys with enough confidence you can get out there and begin. Maybe not. If that one sentence hasn't inspired you enough or given you enough confidence to get going, then keep watching, because I'm going to take you through my basic plan that has taken me from Alaska to Argentina, across Europe on multiple trips, and even a world record in India, all with just my basic approach. Even with all of this experience, I still don't see myself as an expert in this space. I feel like I've just made enough mistakes to learn from some of them to get me on the way. Big spoiler alert, I will overpack for every trip. You will never be able to not get me overpacking. So yeah, take my advice from this, don't overpack, but then don't listen and watch what I do. Yeah, I'm always going to overpack. Hopefully I can walk you through some of the mistakes I've made and some of the prep I've done well and give you some lessons. So let's begin with what I'm calling the core training topics. Be split into two sections. So you'll have your physical training and your mental training. The physical training is all about building endurance slowly. Now you can be a complete non-cyclist and build up to where you need to get to. You can be an advanced cyclist already. The key is consistency over big miles straight away. So you want to build up to it slowly. You don't need to be a racing cyclist, you don't need to be incredibly fast, but covering bigger miles, riding on back-to-back days requires endurance over that explosive power. If you can sit in a saddle and ride at 10 kilometers an hour the whole day, it's much better than riding at 30k an hour for a couple of hours and then dying and not moving again for the rest of the day. So just keep that in mind. If you can, simulate back-to-back days. So if you can ride an hour today, an hour tomorrow, and start to build up that riding multiple days in a row as well, that can be advantageous. How did I start? In 2019, I wasn't a cyclist at all. So I picked up my bike, which I'd used to commute to work on, and every weekend I started to ride further and further. So I think my first ride was 20 miles and it absolutely killed me. And then the next week I planned to do 25 miles, and I slowly started building up. Any distance that felt too much or that really knackered me, I would keep static and go the next week and try and do it again. And slowly the distances built up until I think after a year or two, I could do 100 miles. I remember my first time doing that and it was, insane. It felt horrible. But it allowed me to go bikepacking and know that I could cover the distances even with a heavier bike. Something that also improved my confidence was commuting to work. So regardless of whether I wanted to ride every day, I had to for work. And so that 20-minute ride, even though it wasn't very far, really increased my confidence and got me out on the bike over and over again. So if you can commute to work, I think it definitely helps. And if not, try and simulate doing back-to-back days at some point, even if that's just on the weekend. The second core training component is the mental side of it. Bikepacking for me, especially on some of the more challenging routes, is just as much mental as it is physical. Riding in the rain, in the heat, in the wind is uncomfortable, but by doing that, you build your mental resilience. You're able to see and experience all this world has to offer if you can push through these experiences. So it's important to train in them. It's another reason why commuting can help, because the weather doesn't stop. And so if you're forced to pick up your bike and go out in the rain, or forced to kind of pick up your bike on a hot day and ride to work, it gives you these mini lessons along the way. Sometimes it can be hard on the weekend to see it raining outside and pick up your bike and force yourself to go for a ride. But if you do, it's all increasing that mental resilience. Before my Alaska to Argentina trip, how I really dialed into this mental side and knew that I could push through anything was to do big challenges. And so I really increased the distance far beyond anything I need to do. That culminated in a challenge that I called the Tour de Dorset, which was a 330-kilometer ride around the perimeter of Dorset. And I did that purely so that I knew I would be able to push myself when I needed to. It's not necessary. I realized afterwards, for a normal bikepacking or cycle touring trip, you will never put up these kinds of distances. But what I will say is that the mental resilience that you gain from something like that can definitely help you along the way. And so it's something that I would practice before some of these trips. I would do the same again, just because I think it did help me through those tough times on some of the longer tours I've done. Now, once you've trained yourself mentally and physically, you should be feeling pretty confident and ready to get out there. But there are a few secret weapons that can help you boost your confidence even more. The first is going for a test ride. Now, for those of you that have ridden a loaded touring bike before, you know how heavy a bike can feel. It can feel like a train. So training with a loaded bike can take away some of those nerves that might occur just before you go on a bigger trip. So loading up your bike and going for a test ride, even if it's only for a few miles, can really help to take away some of those pre-trip nerves. My suggestion would be, at the very least, to go for a local loop that you do, but with the loaded bike. Or if you have the time and you're feeling confident enough, go for an overnighter and practice with the full setup. Go wild camp somewhere or booking to a camp spot. That way you'll be able to figure out if there's anything loose, anything rattling, anything that doesn't work. Bad packing habits, like are things in the wrong place that you need to sort out. You can iron all of that out before you start your actual trip. Now, I did this before Alaska to Argentina. I went for a test ride around the UK. I went to say bye to all of my family before my big trip started, and I didn't learn. So you can still make mistakes along the way. I overpacked for that trip. I took even more stuff to the start line of Alaska to Argentina just because I thought I was gonna need so much stuff. You don't. It's actually a kind of a nervous tick, I think, is to just chuck more and more stuff in the bags to make yourself feel better. I promise you, you won't need it all. Don't put it all in there. Listen to me rather than when I don't listen to me. The second thing you can do doesn't involve riding your bike, and that is testing your packing skills and your setup skills. So whilst you're at home, unpack things, repack things, test them in different bags, see if they work. For your camp, try setting it up in your garden or indoors if you've got the space. Test all of these things to see what works and to find problems before they become bigger problems. My biggest tip for this section is to lay absolutely everything out and put them into kind of two piles. The first pile is absolutely essential. You will not be able to live or move without this. The second is nice to have. If it doesn't fit into those two categories, it's immediately out. From the nice to haves, you then need to figure out whether the additional weight is worth it. And sometimes just going through and feeling things in your hands can make you realize how heavy some things that are nice to haves are. That should help you make the decision. As I mentioned before though, I still overpack for every trip, and I will find myself quite often on the start line with way too much stuff. Alaska to Argentina, I mean, this will make some people cry. I think my total bike, including the bike and all of the panniers at the start line, was probably around 75 kilos. And the first 10, 11 days I was riding it, it was an absolute slugfest. My trip started on the north coast of Alaska in the Arctic Ocean. I cycled the Dalton Highway with that whole setup, and I was literally throwing clothes at people on the side of the road. If they needed a jumper, they were getting a jumper. And when I got to my friends in Fairbanks, I went through all of my stuff with a fine-tooth comb, and I think I sent like a 10-kilo package to a friend in San Francisco so that they could take it back home for me in the UK. Don't do that. You'll end up either getting rid of it on the side of the road or trying to find somebody to take it for you. So really do all of that stuff before you go is my advice. And then the third thing you can do before the trip is look at some nutrition and recovery. Test out what foods work for you. Test out and try eating on the bike. Yeah, understanding what foods give you the right energy on the bike can help you along the way and just help you prepare. Although if you are going through foreign countries, it can be difficult to prepare in that sense. The other thing to have a think about is to try and build in like a recovery and stretch routine. It's something that I wish I'd done more of on some of my bigger tours. Whenever I stopped and found a home base somewhere, I would spend a lot of time stretching just to make sure that I wasn't getting too stiff. By the time I've gotten to the end of some of my more recent trips where I'm racing across Europe, after 2 weeks my body just feels like a stiff board. Right, let's crack on. So if you can build in a stretch routine daily, even if it's just 5 minutes in the morning, I think every bit helps for sure. And then the final thing you can train and prepare to do is routine maintenance and repairs on your bike. Next week, I'm hoping to do a full episode on mechanicals and things that will help you along the way for long tours, but I'll quickly run through a few things that you can do or practice before you go. So there's some very quick checks that you should be doing every day, which is your tires, your brakes, and your bolts. So for your tires, it'll be very obvious if they're not inflating or deflating because you won't roll anywhere, and your brakes, best to test them before you find out. Checking those should be natural. You won't need to think about too much. But something that I did routinely try and remember to check was my pannier rack bolts or my water bottle mounting bolts, things like that, just coming loose, especially if I was riding off-road. Something that you should look to check above daily, maybe not weekly, maybe a bit more regularly than that, but that's your chain, just to see if it is dirty, if there's any signs of wear. Give it a wipe down, give it a clean, and give it a re-lube. If you're riding more off-road, you will want to do this more regularly, and sometimes it does become like a daily check. Building on that, if you do ride through some really harsh conditions, if you're riding on beaches, if you're riding on salt flats, you should be cleaning your bike the minute you get a chance. The example that I have was on the salt flats in Bolivia. There are tons of car washes because cars get the same damage as bikes, and so we paid immediately, me and my friend Dom, once we got off the salt flats, to clean our bikes just to make sure that that salt wasn't getting into all of our components and ruining the bike. I did hear some horror stories from people who did not clean their bike once they got off the salt flats, and it is not nice for your bike. So be kind to your bike. As I said before, I will go in more detail into some of these checks and some of these fixes in next week's episode. So that has been a quick run through of my transition over the past 5 or 6 years from a complete novice non-cyclist to whatever I am today, an incredibly passionate bikepacker and cycle tourer, let's say. So start small, test your setup, and remember that your mentality is far more important than the physical side. But above all, the most important thing is just getting started. It doesn't matter what it looks like, just get out there. Next episode, I will be running through mechanicals, what you need to know for bikepacking and cycle tours. I did want to do it this week, and you guys can't see this. I'll break the fourth wall a little bit, but it is pouring down with rain, so it was not possible to do today. Right now though, let's build this community a little bit more. I want to hear how you guys prepare for your bikepacking and cycle touring trips. Do you train really hard, or do you just go out there and wing it? Let me know. And if you're new to bikepacking, check out my Backpacking and Cycle Touring 101 series for more lessons. And don't forget to subscribe to get more stuff like this along the way. As always, I'll catch you guys in the next one.